Welcome, everyone. Welcome to this week's Secret Transmissions podcast. I am your host, codename Fulcrum. You can also just call me Nick. This week we have somebody very special. Before I get into it too much, is that in being such a film, TV person, just getting to kind of know the behind the scenes and learning about this thing that I love, Star Wars, when it comes to that. But to actually be able to have somebody who worked intimately in those projects is super special to me. So I'm very excited to bring on, let's bring him out, Demetrius. Hey.
Welcome. Hello. It is I, Darth Demetrius, your resident Sith Lord. Happy to be here.
It's a pleasure to have you. A couple things. First of all, before we get started too much, where can the people find you on socials?
So I only use Instagram. I have a Twitter. I never go on it. If someone is tweeting, it's not me. I have a TikTok, but I also am not a fan of TikTok because I like to share lawn videos and performance videos. So Instagram is my main mode, and it's at Demeet2K, DEMEET 2K. And I want to actually unveil a big surprise. So since working on the project and while working on the project, I've been creating special Easter eggs for the fans. I've spent 2.5 years creating special Easter eggs for the fans. And it's meant for fans who really like an attention to detail.
Yeah,
because it was sneaky. It was sneaky. And while I was prepping for the role and after I had done the role, I was leaving Easter eggs. So if you go to my Instagram, there's a tab that says Easter eggs. And it will show you how to find them. They're littered over the past 2.5 years. There's over 100 videos.
Oh wow.
Of videos and pictures basically of depicting the mood of Anakin, the anger, the love, the obsession, the passion, and it's all through the lens of an artist, as the artist playing Darth Vader. And then also for the fans, I created sword workshops, also in my Instagram, of a sword style that I developed called sword and shield style. It's an ambidextrous style, and I left instructional videos in my Instagram. I developed it, and you follow the system. It's a very, very complicated, crazy-looking, dual-wielding system for the fans who cosplay and want legitimate sword training. So that was my gift to you.
Awesome. You hit it, and of course, I already have people I know that are already looking for it right now. But stay here, and you can look for it after as well. But also, I'll pop those links into the YouTube as well. So backstory a little bit. First of all, Demetrius, you are, I guess, what you refer to as like an action actor.
Yeah.
And what's interesting about that is that, of course, you played Darth Vader in the Obi-Wan Kenobi series. And just for a moment, what was like the audition process for something like that?
Okay, so I'm a big believer in the Force. I'm a huge believer in the Force. I don't believe that the Force is a thing. I think it's legitimately a true thing. I think it's the way that people describe the universe, God, synchronicities, whatever you want to call it, but it's this energy that permeates everything. And for me, I had heard about the role through the grapevine before it was announced. But you have to understand how secretive the project was. It was super NDA, so no one could say anything, especially the fact that Darth Vader was in this series. This was the biggest secret, absolutely the biggest secret. But I had heard through the grapevine as a suit actor and someone I primarily did suit acting as I was training martial arts. So I was established in that industry, and I heard whispers of a role coming out, an iconic suit actor role that I would be perfect for. And they were just saying, just a heads up, there's this role coming out. It's your height, it's your build, takes place in space, iconic character, fights the sword. So if you have any sword training, maybe brush up on sword. And that was the little tip that I received from a little birdie. And this was a year before we were filming. This was the summer during COVID. This was the summer during COVID. And I started training sword immediately, a little bit. And for me, I felt I didn't really know how to approach it, and I wasn't supposed to know about the role, and no one else knew about the role. So there's really no way to talk about it or even ask around or anything because it was so secretive. So for me, my thing was just a believer in the Force, and manifestation was just, I'm going to train sword, and if you build it, they will come. And I did. Me and my friends were training sword in the park, and I started learning the basics on my one hand. Then I started teaching my other hand. And I had done this for about 3 months of just kind of not training seriously, but just a little bit playing around and kind of putting it out there that I want to work in this universe of playing an iconic character that fights with a sword in space.
Yeah.
Right. And then out of nowhere, the stunt coordinator contacts me because I used to do stunts. That was my introduction to the industry. I did stunts, and then I had a career-ending injury, and then I shifted more into suit acting while training martial arts. So he had contacted me, and my name was dropped a few times, and they were looking for the suit actor for a project coming up, untitled project, super NDA, can't give me any information about it outside of the fact that it takes place in space and it fights with a sword, sci-fi. And I was like, oh, I know exactly what this is. And I felt it inside of me. I had the tingles of just like, I know exactly what this role is.
Yeah.
And I know that this role is me. I feel it inside of me that it's me. So he asked me to shoot. This is stunts. This isn't casting. So he's like, just shoot a video of like movement. And they had a few prompts that they gave us so shoot it with an iPhone and submit it to me, and I'll submit it to production. I said, great. So then I contacted my friend, Bill Parker, who does visual effects. And I contacted my other friend, David Baxter, who's a cosplayer, and I borrowed his screen accurate Darth Vader suit. And I shot an audition of all the prompts that they had in costume. And then I also shot additional scenes, and I shot some acting snippets from Rogue One and just a bunch of stuff that I thought they would find interesting. And then I had my friend do visual effects on it. Now, for everyone that was working with me, the story was I'm working on a fan film. And I really want to get it because I want to play Darth Vader. And I had played it before in a fan film, and I really wanted to get the role. So they're all on board. They're helping me. I had worked together with both of them before on a fan film called Jedi with a GoPro 2, which you could look on YouTube. And it's a whole first-person perspective from a Jedi's perspective of being a Jedi, of using Force powers. It's a really beautiful video. You should watch it if you haven't seen it already. It was released in 2015 by Bill Parker. But I played Darth Vader in that. Yeah. So and we borrowed David Baxter's suit to shoot it. So we get the team together. And I shoot this thing, and I submit it with my agent's information, and I send it to the stunt coordinator, and I hear crickets, nothing. And 1 week goes by, 2 weeks goes by, 3 weeks goes by, and I was like, oh no, I wasn't supposed to say anything. It was NDA. I spoke too much. I said too much, and I kicked the hornet's nest, and that was my shot. But on the other hand, I also took my shot. You know, like a lot of people would have an opportunity and they wouldn't commit completely. And I was like, I took my shot. I went 100% for it. And I heard nothing. But this was also the holiday season. So it was around Thanksgiving. It was during the tail ends of COVID. Not the tail ends of COVID, but during the craziness of COVID. It was Thanksgiving. It was Christmas. And then out of the blue, I get contacted by my agent to audition for an untitled Disney project. And the script was for a general. And I was reading the script, and I was like, that's Darth Vader. It's not written as Darth Vader, but I feel that this is Darth Vader. And I was like, yes, we're back on board. We're back on board. So then I auditioned for it as if I was auditioning for Darth Vader. And I had done a little bit of prep, and I was like, okay, how do I make this character believable as this character, but also add bits of Vader into it so that it reads? Mm-hmm. And this was the auditioning. This was during COVID, so auditioning's on Zoom. And I believe we had 4 Zoom auditions. We had a Zoom audition, a callback. And finally, the final callback was with Deborah Chow, the director, the first AD, the stunt coordinator, the entire team. And I have this Vader mug, and I put it in the shot, like right here. I don't know if you can see the table. Okay, so I had the Vader mug in the shot of the Zoom audition, just right there, you know, sipping my water or my coffee to the Vader mug. And then at the very, very end, Deborah Chow was like, do you know what you're auditioning for? And I was like, yeah, I have no idea. Which was an obvious lie, but I knew because they had seen my audition tape. Yeah, we know now. They had seen my audition tape, but I was just like, yeah, I have no idea. And they're like, you're auditioning for Darth Vader. And I was like, oh my God. You know,
that's where acting comes into play right there.
Yeah. and then that wasn't the final audition. I still had an in-person movement audition. Mm-hmm. So I went to the studio once again during COVID. So you're getting COVID tested. We're all wearing masks. We're social distancing. You know, I work with my wardrobe team, and then they sit 6 feet away from me, and I'm sitting by myself in the seat waiting for everything to happen. And they had very specific prompt. And it was my first time meeting Deborah Chow and in person. And as I met her, I realized she had a very, very, very specific image and vision of Darth Vader. And it started off with the walking, with the standing, with the presence itself, and she was giving me these prompts. And I had a recurring knee injury. I've dislocated my knee 3 times. I had done 4, and this was what made me quit stunts and transition into acting.
Right.
So there was still a tail end of compensation of, like, when you have an injury, your body changes a little bit. So there was a slight sway in my hips. It's so slight. No one would ever catch it, and no one has caught it for years. I've done so many projects. No one has said anything. I know how to isolate my hips. I could hide it from anyone, because if I tell them that I used to have a recurring knee injury, they get skittish. You know, so obviously I'm downplaying it. I'm doing the movement, and what Deborah notices is there's a box on the chest, and it keeps on swaying. It just wiggles ever so slightly when I walk. What's happening actually is that as I step, one of my hips doesn't pass through normally. It kind of grinds, the hip that I dislocated. So it's a slight sway, and no one else has ever noticed it, but Deborah Chow noticed it. And she was giving me notes to isolate it. And then and there, I knew that it wasn't something, I knew how important the character was, to the amount of detail that she was paying attention to.
Right.
Where everything had to be perfect, absolutely perfect. The walk, the stop, And I was getting very specific prompts of trying to recreate the power of David Prowse, just the sheer power, but also the grace of what's been established in the newer animations of it and the newer depictions. There's two different depictions of Vader. It's been updated. There's the power Vader of David Prowse, and then there's the graceful Master Vader that is now canon. So we have these two different Vader world universes, and my job is to put them together, is to have the power and the grace. So I instantly knew that even though I have an extensive background in training in circus, and I've studied the body, and I'm a meditation teacher, and I teach a lot of different disciplines, I knew that this was beyond my expertise, and I needed someone to truly guide me to do it right. So I immediately requested a movement coach, and then I worked with a movement coach to retrain my body specifically to play Darth Vader. And we did a lot of muscle isolation training, a lot of ballet-like training, a lot of hip isolation, and it was a very extensive 5-month training process. This was before we even started filming, for me to make sure that I had everything perfect so that we could give the perfect Vader.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just showing, I've got a bunch of pictures and videos here, but here's the the final product here. And of course, when this magazine came out, like, everybody just lost their minds, because this had everything: Obi-Wan, Ahsoka, you name it. And of course, the costume, that looks like a lot to carry.
I mean, so I asked a lot about the Darth Vader costume. Obviously, it's one of the first questions that I get. And my response is always the same, and that's that the Darth Vader suit is exactly what the Darth Vader suit is supposed to be, which isn't about comfort whatsoever. It's mostly, for me, I understood a lot of the anger that I was able to pull from, and I understood Anakin so deeply, and understood Vader at a much deeper level from wearing the suit and playing it, because me, myself, just like Anakin, I also am an acrobat. So I'm used to moving, flipping, dancing, gliding, moving, changing levels, things like that, and suddenly being put in the suit where I lose 70% of mobility instantly. Mm-hmm. You know, I can't reach my arm across here, my arm stops here. I can't reach up here. So you have like these breaks on your movement where you try to do something that naturally what your body wants to do, and the suit stops you. And that stop is frustrating. And in fact, it could make you angry. So there's that aspect of it. And then also there was a lot of unique things that I started noticing as I was playing the role. Like, for instance, the first part is because you're covered from head to toe in every part, you lose the sensation of the air in the room. Normally you feel a slight breeze. You could feel if it's hot, if it's cold. It's always hot. And the first sensation is you lose your sensation of touch. The second thing that I noticed was because the dome covers up your head completely, it severely cuts off your hearing. So you go from full hearing to like 30%. And in that moment, the only thing that you hear is actually your own breath echoing inside the dome. So as you're playing the role, you hear your own breath. And that definitely helps you find the character. Yeah. Literally, it's the only thing that's drowning everything out is your own breath. And then the next part was with all these restrictions, you also can't see that well either. You're essentially in a sensory deprivation chamber that moves, a mobile sensory deprivation chamber. Yeah. And in that moment, you learn to really feel your space as if it's the Force itself. You literally feel your space because you cannot see. If someone is standing next to me, I don't know if they're next to me. I have nothing that guides it because my head level is here, which means I only see what's in front of me and I only see far away. Because Darth Vader isn't a mopey character, so he's not here looking at the floor. He has to be here. He's a master. Right. So everything is done blind, essentially, and I'm counting all my steps and I'm choreographing my movement in my head. So with Olga, my movement coach, Olga Sokolova, we trained a lot of stuff blindfolded. We would have a blindfold, we'd create an obstacle course, and we'd have training. It was Jedi training. It was real, yeah. You would walk, okay, 30 steps forward, pause, take a left. You're going to walk around an obstacle, go forward, pick up an obstacle, come back, walk back around your path, and you have to use sense memory to remember your environment. You have to have a 3D map in your mind because you're blind. So we were doing it blindfolded, and it helped so much when I got to set because you can't see. And the last thing that I noticed was just the power of the suit. It's an iconic suit, so the moment you're wearing the suit, everyone around you instantly gives you respect because this is Darth Vader, the most powerful villain in all of villain history, right? But the other part was that you're in this isolated universe. It's you inside the suit, and it's the rest of the world. And there's this huge disconnect. And because you're so isolated, you truly feel untouchable, emotionally and physically. You have this physical barrier from you and the entire reality, and you're in your own universe. And you also know that you're inside of a tank, so nothing can touch you and nothing can hurt you. And that was part of the gravity of the character, and understanding that as you move through space. Yeah, the suit was cool, but it was also very uncomfortable. I both myself and my stunt double had back problems for a little bit. We both had back spasms from the suit,
and
because it was so.
There's both of you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's myself and Tom O'Connell, and that's our movement coach, Olga Sokolova.
Oh, nice. Somebody asked just for a moment. Black Bear, was that the code name that they used to kind of keep things under wraps? Yeah.
Black Bear was code for Darth Vader.
Space Bear was the code name for The Last Jedi. So,
oh, cool.
That's pretty close to that. When it came to, because being a theater person myself, when it came to knowing that you were going to be Darth Vader, and of course you did a lot of that physical movement retraining, how about the emotional aspect of it when it comes to taking on that character? Because you have the slight looks of everything that you have, but there's also a way in which you stand and a way in which you move. How much emotional training did you do with it?
I did a lot. I did too much. I pulled an Anakin, and I went too far into character, and I actually got lost in character when we finished shooting. And when we finished shooting, I was like borderline suicidal for months because of how far I had approached the character and how deeply I lived the character. Because for me, it was, when I got the role, I had this whole freak out moment. It lasted like 2 weeks where I was super excited. I'm part of this grind of auditioning, trying to get the role. And then I got the role, and I finally understood what it was that I got. And the gravity of it, it's going to end one of two ways. I'm either going to be revered for my performance, or I'm going to be crucified for my performance. And there is no middle line. It's going to be one or the other.
Yeah.
And that was the gravity. So I started filming. When I started doing it, I started the character first in a physical standpoint, coming from physical theater, and from mime, I started just the physicality and the movement of the character, watching it, obsessing about it, the details, when he does what are his choices. And then I start filming myself with bits that I've collected to train, and I look at it, and for me, it doesn't feel like Vader. It feels really flat. It feels inorganic. It feels like I'm copying someone else's performance. It looks like I'm cosplaying. And that's what my feeling was. This was about 3 weeks into my training, like 3 weeks to a month. And I freaked out. I was like, oh my God, I'm going to ruin this whole project for everybody. And that was my feeling. And I contacted my friend David Baxter, the one who lent me the suit. And he's a big Vader cosplayer. And for me, he is like the biggest wealth of Vader knowledge out of anyone else I knew. But also I can't say anything about the role, so I'm in this place. So I kind of played it off as like, I'm doing this fan film, still the fan film story.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I hit this block with the character, and I'm trying to get some kind of advice, because for me, everything feels flat, and I'm freaking out, and I'm hoping to get something that will help guide me to the direction I need to go. Mm-hmm. And I think he already knew that I was doing the project. I think he had kind of pieced it together. But so his response shocked me, because he said, Demetrius, I'm not going to tell you anything that could affect your character. It's right. Like my advice to you is I'm not going to give you any advice. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to explain to you what Star Wars meant to me, and what the character meant to me, and what it was as a child watching this for the first time, and the cultural context of when it came out, and what was happening, and why it was a phenomenon. And this was supposed to calm me down, but it made me freak out way more. You
basically got a Yoda moment.
Yeah, I got a Yoda
like,
moment.
But what does it mean?
And I'm very, very thankful for that Yoda moment, because then I sat down and I said, okay, I think I understand what it is.
Right.
I'm trying to play Darth Vader. I'm trying to imitate Darth Vader, but that's not the character who I'm playing. I'm playing Anakin. who turned into Darth Vader. And for me to play Darth Vader, I have to understand Anakin. That was my consensus. And then I went back to studying, and then I really studied just Anakin. And I studied Anakin, and I started finding parallels with my own life with Anakin. And then I realized that I'm Anakin. It clicked, because everything in his story was parallel to my story. It was eerily parallel, where I grew up as an immigrant, as a very, very poor immigrant, and he grew up as a slave. And the pressure of chasing after something, having to prove yourself, and not owning any possessions. And also, I'm a romantic, and I write poetry and do a lot of, I'm really into art. And he himself is a romantic, and I understood the parallels of the story, and I understood his psychology. I understood his obsession. I understood the acrobatics. I understood the fighting, the pressure of being the chosen one. And as I started really understanding the character, I understood the fall. And as I started reading that and studying the lore, and then I understood his mentality, and then I understood Darth Sidious, and I understood that the Jedi were wrong, and I understood what I had to do, and the resolve that it takes to do what I had to do, because everything that we were doing wasn't working, and that there's a moment of resolve of, I'm going to burn the ships behind me, and my only path is forward, and I'm doing it for something that I truly believe and something that I love. So as I understood this, and then I understood the fall, and then I understood Darth Vader, all the pieces came together. And as I was doing this, I was doing a lot of extra stuff. Specifically, I did a lot of rage training. So I would meditate into rage. I teach meditation. I teach people how to tap into the placebo effect. So I've meditated for years. And what I did was I took everything that I knew and I flipped it backwards. And everything that everyone tells you not to do in your first acting class, and everything that everyone tells you not to do in your first meditation class, that's what I did. And I would focus on, try to find the negative in a situation, anything. I would just look at something and I would obsess about the negative, and I would force myself to spiral in a negative spiral. And then I would use hyperventilation with this technique, and I would reiterate it in a spiral until I got manic, and then I start hyperventilating, and then I would start getting angry and angrier and angrier and angrier, and then I would calm myself down. And I did this for months. I did this the entire training, to the point where in the beginning I was so turbulent that I was starting to blow up on people around me, my brother specifically, and we have a housemate. And it became to a point where because a few times they accidentally stepped in during mid-training while I'm in my rage sessions, and that was a conflict. So then we have this outdoor area where I'm at right now, and we made a house rule that if I'm ever outside, don't talk to me. That means I'm meditating. That means I'm doing my rage training, and that I'll calm myself down, and then I'll go back into the house, and then I'll be calm. But when I'm here, I'm in a rage. That's the whole point. So what ended up happening was, over the time, I became more and more secluded, and I spent more time by myself, more time outside. And then I was doing activities longer while I was enraged. I would walk frantically because I had to practice a specific walk, and I was practicing 3 hours a day. So do my rage training, and then I would rage walk for 3 hours, and then I would rage train sword for 3 hours. And I was just in this rage state for so long, and I had done this for months. So by the time we got to set, I was already 5 months into my training. And at that point, I could already control it. I could feel the impulses, but I could hold them back. And at that level, I could go in and out of character really easily and not be turbulent for the people around me. But that required that learning curve in the beginning of doing it in my house and learning where my limits were. And then what happened was, after we finished shooting, of being so long in this headspace and opening up Pandora's box to always react to your intrusive thoughts. You know, Darth Vader doesn't hold back. If he doesn't like something, you're going to know instantly, one way or another. And I had opened up this Pandora's box, and I had let it flow free out of me. And when I finished filming, I couldn't stop. I felt the impulses of Darth Vader in every interaction. I just couldn't stop. Anything that was the slightest slight, I would instantly want to backhand them. I'd instantly want to fight someone. I'd instantly want to have a verbal altercation. And that's where my go-to was. I wasn't reacting to it, but inside, that's what the impulse was. And as we continued, time went on after shooting, I thought it was going to go away, but it didn't. In fact, it got stronger. And it felt like my personality had split. And it felt like I was almost schizophrenic, where I had Darth Vader and I had Demetrius, the actor, and they were fighting each other. And Darth Vader was winning, and Demetrius was getting weaker and tired and couldn't resist anymore. And I was like, okay, this is not good. And after that, I went on a whole spirit journey for 3 months, and I did everything I possibly could to not see everything in melancholy and not to be mad. And I reconnected with every mentor I've ever had. I taught children, I worked with animals, I traveled, I taught free workshops to everyone in all of my disciplines. I went to Mexico and I taught free workshops in Mexico, and nothing was working. All of my meditation training wasn't working. All of the tools that I developed that I teach other people were making it softer, but it wasn't fixing the problem. And I was journaling and I was doing everything and I couldn't stop, and the anger was there. And finally what happened was I ended up breaking my hand at an audition. And when I broke my hand, I was going to Mexico the next day to teach handstand workshops. I teach handstand transition theory. I have my own system I developed. So I'm there to teach free workshops to underprivileged Mexican circus artists, who a lot of them live on the streets, and they're a lot of friends of ours. And as I go there, I can't teach handstands anymore. My Spanish isn't strong enough to explain it without showing. And then I took that moment, and I was already there for 3 weeks. And I spent all that time just focusing on healing my hand. And I teach people how to tap into the placebo effect. So I was essentially doing, for 12 hours a day, doing icing cycles, doing a lot of Tai Chi-like exercises, a lot of visualization of stem cells being released to my hand and healing it. So in the span of 3 weeks, by the time I got back to the States, my hand had healed. And it was supposed to receive, I was supposed to get 2 pins. I was supposed to get surgery in my hand. And I didn't. I just went to Mexico, and I was like, and they said, well, if it heals wrong, we're going to have to re-break your hand, and then it's going to have to restart the healing cycle. And I went and I rehabbed it. And when I came back, I realized that the anger was gone, because I'd spent so much time focusing my intention on healing myself, specifically my hand. But what that was in that moment, I was just channeling all my awareness into healing self. So when I had finished, I had already calmed down. I had already manically spent 3 weeks doing physiotherapy exercises and icing and doing all those visualization. And then I calmed down, and then everything was good. And then we approached the reshoots, which I didn't want to do.
I mean, it's a crazy journey. The fact that like you pretty much like created your own Mustafar, in order to find that rage, and you kind of went through all the processes that you dove into the character so much, and like you quite literally go down their entire story arc.
Yeah. And literally, I had a crash course of it.
And the fact that, I mean, the pressure, of course, like there's only been a handful of people over the last like over 45 years of people who have actually been live action Darth Vader. Because like in the original trilogy, you just had the 3 people, mostly David Prowse, but then like 1 stunt person, and then Sebastian Shaw. You had Rogue One.
Yeah, Bob Anderson. Bob Anderson was the stunt person.
Oh, thank you. And then of course, you know, we have animated, but then it was just Hayden, pretty much for the prequels. But now like you're taking on this role, and that must have been intensely pressurized for you when that happened.
Yes,
but,
yes.
Yeah. So first
but you
of all,
talked about it. You talked about it. I knew what the stakes were. Oh, sorry. I knew what the stakes were if I didn't deliver it right.
Mm-hmm.
It was super important, especially because I was meeting fans and just asking questions, and I knew instantly that it's, like I said, it was going to only go one of 2 ways. Either I crush the role, or the role crushes me.
Yeah.
You know, that's going to be one of the 2 options. And for me, coming from circus, and when I trained with Cirque du Soleil, and then later on when I worked on Broadway, I was already used to pushing my body through 6, 7, 8 hours a day of training. My brother and I had trained, at one point we had trained 10 hours a day for a long time. So I knew what my best was, and I made a promise to myself that I was going to give my best, no matter what, anticipating that even with all my work, that still someone will find fault in my performance and they'll tear it down. But for me, if I had the ability to do something to make the role better, and I didn't do it, and the people hated it, I wouldn't forgive myself as an artist, as an actor. So for me, it was, I'm going to give everything I have from the start. I'm going to sprint the whole way through. And when people hate it, because I anticipated that they would, I will say, hey guys, that was my best. I literally could not do anything more than what I did. I did 10 hours a day for 5 months nonstop.
Yeah.
Like when I got to set, I was already burnt out, and we hadn't even started filming yet. Just burnt out for what I was putting myself through with the training, the rage training, the sword training, the walking, everything. Because it was go, 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 go.
Yeah. For those of you in the chat, what did you think of the Darth Vader performance? I know I'm putting everybody on the spot, but
yeah,
no problem. First of all, you could just see the power there. And I have to show this because it's you with Deborah Chow, and
That's
that's a
that's this photo is a photo bomb. That's the funniest part. Is they were taking a photo and I walked in behind their photo and photobombed it. And that's my only photo with Deborah Chow because you're not really allowed to have cameras on set.
Yeah. I love it. For me personally, I thought it was fantastic. I thought it was powerful. Like you had the Darth Vader mannerisms. There was a lot of I do have some video also ready, but there's a lot of like Darth Vader like looking out of a window, which you see all the time in the original trilogy. It was like constantly like just looking out. But even with that, you have to have that power just standing there, and you even see that like just let's go here like oh nope, that's not one I want to play. That's always good. Well, there's power.
That's me though.
Yeah,
yeah,
I love that. And of course, like even
I'll touch on to what you said.
Oh yeah, please.
So what is the difference between this performance and cosplay? What makes it different for you?
So first of all, I mean, I do some cosplay. I have a Captain Rex cosplay, and
I'm not saying anything wrong with cosplay. I'm asking what the difference is.
For me, a lot of times when it comes to cosplay, it's you're not being the character itself per se. You're being a caricature in a way of that character. Like it's close, but you're still like performing differently than you would. 'Cause, like if you're at a convention, you're going to perform differently for the camera, for photos, for people than you would if you were in the film itself. There's this element of almost animation when you're cosplaying than real life, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it's a really great answer. So with me, as I was doing the role, the hardest thing that I came across was the limitations of what I'm allowed to do within the role of the character, right? So I have to portray emotions, and for me, this was an entire masterclass on subtlety, on how small can I do it. So we were doing a lot of things that's imperceivable to the eye. That's the funny thing is you look at it and you feel power, but you don't know why you feel power. Which means that I'm doing a great job as an actor to depict power without you knowing. But I'm gonna tell you what it is. A lot of what we did was we used hyperventilation to build up the anger. So I would physically take deeper and deeper breaths and faster breaths. But the funny thing is the suit covers everything up. You can't see it. I looked at it later and I was like, wow, you're seeing like 0.01% of what I'm actually doing to make it. But what you do is you feel something. You're feeling that there's life and there's essence and there's a soul behind it versus just a person in a costume. And that's what the training was for, was that we had to one, master the movement, but we had to learn how to use subtlety, how to use the smallest gesture to depict something, how to show intimidation while doing the least amount possible. And one of the things that I would do was I would watch TV. It wasn't TV, it was like YouTube videos and stuff like that, training for the character. But I would stand in absolute stillness. I would not move for like 2 hours. I wouldn't fidget my feet. I wouldn't fidget if something was uncomfortable. I would stay frozen to train for that moment of looking out the window. Because in that moment, he's in his mind, he's in his own meditation. And Vader spends most of his time in meditation. That's what he does. He's either meditating or he's getting shit done. Two things, two modes. So in that moment, it's to capture the stillness but hold the power. But remember, if you're just completely still, you just look like a robot. You could just put a prop to do that. So how do you keep life in the character and make it real and make it alive while still being as still as possible and depicting within the parameters of what Darth Vader is? That was the challenge. And that was what we nailed. I was working with Olga Sokolova, and we worked for months on answering this specific question of how do we make it read while doing the least amount possible. And the fact that you can't tell is what it is. Yeah.
That's the subtlety, the difference, big difference between like cosplay and actually being in film. And like just being in a suit, the restriction that you have there, and learning how to exude that's a level beyond like just kind of your basic acting that that takes so much more work when it comes to that. John, I think first of all, everybody's saying that they loved you. You were terrifying. You killed it. Amazing. So showing part of this scene, but John says when he saw you walking through the village as Obi-Wan was hiding, you were just like rage incarnate. So this is like the horror scene moment with Vader. I cut a little bit of out because there's some like graphicness to it, but just that walking and that presence, and I don't think Darth Vader has ever been more terrifying than like in this moment. You and Deborah Chow just crushed it.
Yeah, I'll take partial credit, but Deborah Chow's a genius. Working with her, she's my favorite director, hands down my favorite director, because of the passion that she brought for the project, but also how she was able to depict her vision. She could explain things in such a way that you understand the essence exactly of what we're looking at, and we were both on page with everything. But one of the notes that I got from this scene, which it didn't make, I'm not sure if it made the final cut, but it was when we're walking and I have the kid. His name is Bruce. He's a phenomenal human, super talented stunt actor, but everyone calls him the kid. So I force push him into the wall, and I'm about to break his neck. And Deborah, one of my notes that I got was, Deborah's like, I want you to look the mother in the eyes and let her know that you don't care before you break his neck.
Oh, that's next
That
level.
was the note.
Wow,
yeah. That's where we were going. And that's why you feel that, because that was the energy behind it. Mm-hmm. Is that it's Anakin throwing a tantrum, showing how little he cares and how little he is Anakin. That's what we're seeing.
Yeah.
We're seeing Anakin proving himself for the first time after being gone for 10 years. And that also is my first day on set. So after 5 months, that was my first day on set. So after 5 months of training, and only a handful of people had ever met me or had heard about me, because everything's done in code. There's Black Bear, and on the call sheet it says DB, Dmitrious Bistrevsky, but it's just initials because we don't want any leaks. We don't want people to know what's happening. So I did boot camp, Vader boot camp with Tom O'Connell and with Olga Sokolova. We spent it was like a month and a half in Vader boot camp. And then we separated our roles. I worked exclusively with Olga on just movements for I don't even know how long. And I had asked to be separated from the cast because a lot of the things that we're training was vulnerable, where we're hyperventilating and we're playing with breath and doing stuff blindfolded where it just looks weird. So I asked if we could train independently. So we trained independently, and no one knew who I was. And that was my first day in the suit on set, and that was the first scene that we shot.
So most of your interactions with actual acting with the people themselves, that the day on set was really your first interaction with a lot of these people every time you would go on.
Yeah, I had met Moses and Ewan during Sword Camp. They were going through Sword Camp, and I wasn't part of Sword Camp, but I was there one time for a fitting. So I just happened to be in the same studio. And I was waiting for my rehearsal, and I had a couple hours downtime. And I was just kind of sitting there and stretching, and Ewan came up to me, and he's like, "Why aren't you in Sword Camp?" And I'm like, "I don't know." And he's like, do you want to do it? I was like, "Yeah." He's like, "Well, jump in with us." I was like, "Okay, cool." So I grabbed a sword and I jumped in, and that was my first time I met Moses and Ewan, and I got to train with him one day with the rest of the stunt team. And then after that, I just focused on my own emotional journey of the character.
Yeah. That's... that is awesome. And also, like, everybody I know listening right now is like, Sword Camp. I want to do Sword Camp, and like
I want to do Sword Camp.
Yeah, I know. This show, when it comes to Vader, added so many layers to both Anakin and Vader and that journey. I mean, starting with of course, like, this moment of like that whole like, what have you become? I am what you made me. Just starting with that, when we first had that, and of course, like, everywhere on the internet, that's all you ever heard, was that. How were these like initial encounters for you, like these moments? I know, I think when it comes to people doing the lines and then you acting, there was a process that you had, I believe, or that you had to develop on set, right?
Yeah, so we first started off in rehearsals with me saying the lines. But it was interesting because I'm trying to emote physically, And the more anger is in my voice, the more the helmet shakes.
Mm-hmm.
And the more that I'm trying to prevent the helmet from shaking while keeping the intention, the less my physical performance looks the way it's supposed to. So we had done it a couple times. It wasn't working as well as it could have. And then they brought in Dorian Gregory, the voice actor. And Deborah had this idea, and she came up to me. She's like, "Okay, what if we get a voice actor, and he's going to do the lines, and you're going to do the physicality, and you guys are going to work together?"
Right.
And for me, instantly, like my first idea was, this is not going to work because there's going to be a delay. You're going to hear the voice. I'm going to process the voice. I'm going to have the reaction, and it's always going to be delayed, like you're watching a dubbed movie or something like something that's buffering, and it's just not going to read. But we got him into rehearsals, and our first read together, it clicked. It clicked so well. And I realized that at the time I had spent so much training in doing improv to dance. No, not dance specifically, but circus. But we did a lot of drills with improv to music, where you play a music and you do an impromptu performance in the moment without choreographing anything. And you have to be hyper aware of the music and everything. So for me, Dorian's voice was the music. The resonance of his voice and his performance, I could feel it in my body and I could react intuitively in real time. So there was never a delay. And the more we worked together, the more we started developing this telepathic connection, which was really crazy. We really clicked it off. And halfway through, we started talking about it, where I could sense what he was going to do. And I could preemptively react to it. And he could sense what I could do. And he would react to it. And our whole performance was a dance together, where he's acting and I'm acting, and we're acting together, but also listening to each other at the same time. And then there were moments where, because his recording booth was right next to Deborah Chow's booth, he would get notes from Deborah, and I would know what his note was, and I would apply it in my physicality. So Deborah would never have to come to me and give me the note.
Mm-hmm.
So we had this really crazy in sync moment, but also at the same time, I was also working with Olga in real time, because we had the reason I had requested to bring Olga on for the project is that Olga is a high level dance instructor, and one of the best instructors in the world, specifically in dance and ballet and contemporary. And she teaches all these elite students. So her attention to detail and physicality is next level. So she would be watching my performance in my peripheral, where I could see her. And like a conductor, she would be giving me notes. If ever my helmet tilted 1 millimeter to the left, I would receive a note in real time. Here, here, here. And I'd be getting these hands. So we created this hand language during the whole process. So I'd be getting notes from her while listening to Dorian's performance, and then doing my own acting choices in real time.
Yeah.
That's the crazy thing, because it took a whole team, but also we wanted it to be perfect. And even if there was the slightest tilt of the head, that's not perfect. If there was the slightest sway in the shoulder or in the hip, that's not perfect. And we were aiming for absolute perfection. And we had a team that was dedicated for absolute perfection, because that's what the fans deserve. It's Darth Vader. It's the most iconic villain in cinema history.
Well, what's interesting about the process that you went through is that it almost makes it even back to the roots of A New Hope and Empire Strikes Back. The fact that you had David Prowse, you had James Earl Jones's voice, you had all these people that come together to create this character. And having been in a suit and tried to talk to people, it is near impossible anyway. So that is completely understandable when it comes to that. But also being a dance instructor, partner dance instructor, like having that symbiosis with somebody else and being able to create something together is a very real thing, and you really develop that relationship and just get on the same page. But the fact that you were able to work that all together and be in real time, it reminds me of, like, if you see shots in A New Hope of David Prowse saying something, because a lot of the lines that he was saying weren't the lines that made it into the movie. So his reactions sometimes would sometimes be a little delayed. Sometimes he would say something and then you would see like a hand gesture afterwards. I know they fixed a lot of that later, but even David Prowse in like Empire Strikes Back said he wished he knew certain lines because you would have played that differently, which I think your performance gave it that much more power, because you did know in real time how and what was being said at that moment. So I think it all really worked together for me in that whole
Thank you.
the group of putting that together. Did you have a favorite moment in filming or being on set? Like, was there a favorite moment that you had?
There was a lot. There was a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Like my experience on set was literally a dream. It was because we were, for one, I can't really put it into words. Just the energy bubbling behind the performance
Mm-hmm.
of the atmosphere of everyone, because we knew we were making history. That was the gravity of the set, because we knew that we were fulfilling a missing piece in the canon. So we literally were in the middle of Star Wars history, inside of history. So everyone was really excited and giddy, and there was a lot of like role playing with everyone, with extras, with PAs, with people who are stand-ins. Everyone would, I'd be force choking people, force pushing people. Everyone would come to me and call me Lord Vader. You know, there was that level of everyone being a fan in one place. You have a collection of fans who believe in what they're doing. And that was the thing behind it, was that we all believed in what we were doing. We knew that what we were doing was important and it was valuable for everybody. So there's that element of it. I really, really enjoyed that aspect of it. I had a few really cool moments with, I had a personal assistant, Michelle, who would take care of me. She would make sure that I was drinking electrolytes and make sure that I'm eating, because when I'm acting in the scenes, you just forget and then you crash.
Yeah.
So with her, I had a lot of really cool moments, specifically because she is a legitimate Star Wars fan. And I had spent 5 months studying the lore and the philosophy. I studied a lot of philosophy and theory and movement and rage and meditation and sword training. So I'm training all this stuff. And she would blow my mind with her Star Wars knowledge. So I would constantly be asking her about things in the show while we're doing it, and we would just chat, and she would give me all these like juicy secrets and details about the whole process and about the lore and things that I never knew. And that was one of the coolest experiences, of having a legitimate fan in my ear talking to me. And that was one of the things, was when I was filming this, I had a whole series of faces that I knew I had to look in the eyes when I finished the project. I had David Baxter, I had Bill Parker, and Michelle was one of those people where I was like, when I finish, she is the person who I want to appreciate this. A true fan who loves it to this level, where, you know, so like I studied for 5 months, and she had way more knowledge than I did, you know, and that was a really beautiful moment. So one of the moments when we're in Fortress Vader, and you have the throne room scene, and we're there as they're setting up the lights, and then she leans over to me, because we had a really close bond, because she would, like, we did a lot of stuff where she would play games where she would mix different flavors in the electrolytes, and I would guess what flavor it was. And we were doing this throughout the whole filming. So we had this really close relationship, and she leaned over and she whispered, she's like, "Oh man, I really wish I could sit in that throne." But you know, she's a PA. She can't just walk in the throne and sit down. There's work happening. People are doing stuff. It's crazy. It's a production studio. So I was like, "Michelle, can you sit in that seat for me and see if it's sittable? I don't know if it's sittable. Can you check for me if it is?" Mm-hmm. And then she sat down on the throne, and just to watch her back straighten and her arms come up and become Vader, that was one of the most beautiful moments I've ever experienced in my life. That's one of my favorite moments.
That's awesome. I mean, being a fan for my entire life, because the original trilogy was coming out when I was a little kid. That makes me old, everyone. Yeah. But with that and studying the lore and everything, there's always so much. There's all the comics, there's all the book, there's everything. There's always something you don't know. So to be discovering that while you're playing this character. First of all, that throne room, Vader's, the fact that room is essentially like looking out of Vader's mask. I loved that little detail. And then of course there's you talking to Palpatine. A hollow projection. Just that.
So I'm going to give you a little fun thing. So one of the things that I realized while filming, and this is something that is never mentioned, I've never come across it in the books, but something I experienced firsthand, and it added on to the gravity and the power of Vader. Mm-hmm. And that was, when you stare into Vader's face, when you look him in the eyes, the only thing you see is your own reflection. And that's what I realized while I was acting with everyone else when we were doing our scenes, was they were staring into two mirrors and they were watching their own fear, the fear in their own faces.
Yeah.
That's what they see when they look into Vader's eyes. And that's the most powerful thing ever. And that's part of the stoicism of the character, is that he shows people their own fear by looking into his eyes.
I mean, Vader's almost more powerful, like more menacing, just standing there and just like you get nothing back when people are just talking to him face to face, and you just get that power. Like, you better tell me the right answer. And I mean, there's obviously these rage moments. Of course, I'm gonna play this one right here, where there's just that full like anger and rage, and then power there. What was it like?
3,000 hours. Yeah. 3,000 hours of walking training. Not 3,000, 1,000. Yeah. I practiced walking for 1,000 hours so that you could get that walk. I practiced 3 hours a day the whole time from the very beginning so that you could have that walk.
That's insane. We appreciate it, of course. Don't get me wrong. I mean, because of all the characters, like obviously Obi-Wan, Obi-Wan's important to everyone, but like even further back, Vader, because like, you know, for a lot of years you didn't have Ewan as Obi-Wan, but you always had Vader. And I think people cling to that even more. I mean, Ewan's a treasure, and anything he does, you know, people love Ewan. But when it comes to Vader, you were talking about, because you know, being a nerd, I kind of want to know your perspective on this. When it comes to that understanding of Vader, but understanding Anakin's downfall, there are certain moments that we had in this. Of course, like you start off with the "I am what you made me," but by the end, you have the "you didn't kill Anakin, I did," and a lot of those moments. When it comes to that Anakin's fall. How do you perceive that? How do you look upon it? Because you were that person at that time, and everybody debates this moment in Star Wars. But how do you look upon it?
Okay, so this is the way I see it. Imagine this. Imagine you're the chosen one. You were a slave. You were taken by monks, right, and put inside a monk temple, and they tell you, "Hey, you're the chosen one. You're going to save the world." Right? Imagine the pressure that is on a child to be the chosen one, on a young adult to be the chosen one. And your whole life, your only guidance, everyone around you, when you ask them for answers, they tell you meditate. Look into the Force. You will find the answers. But he's got a lot of really conflicting things and a lot of pressure of being the chosen one, right? He's got no one to talk to. Everyone, if he has any kind of concern, they won't take him seriously. He also has the pressure of being your rising star in a football team or in any kind of sports team, where everyone looks at him. They look at him. He's put on a pedestal, but also he's put with an observation lens. Everyone is watching what he does his entire life. He's the chosen one, right? You start having these conflicting emotions. I'm feeling stuff that makes me confused. I'm a human. I'm going through puberty. I'm falling in love. I'm feeling these things that meditation doesn't necessarily answer: human emotion, confusion, identity, pressure. You have all these issues, and then you have one person in your entire universe who treats you like a person. He doesn't treat you like a chosen one. He doesn't put pressure on you. He doesn't make you do stuff. He doesn't expect anything from you. He's just a friend who gives you advice. His name is Palpatine. He's also a senator. Very high up. He's like a famous person, right? He's a senator. He's very famous, but he takes time to hang out with you, to answer your questions, to give you advice. He's like this father figure that you've never had. You've had mentors, you've had friends, you've had rivalries, but you haven't had a true father. Someone who wants nothing from you. He just wants to hang out with you and be like, "Oh, what are you thinking about? Oh yeah, this is how I feel. Oh, you're having emotions? Yeah, that's normal. You're a teenager." Right? Now at the same time, you have a very distinct connection with the Force. It is unique to anyone else. You are the chosen one. And that connection is that you don't have to question the Force. All you have to do is you have an instinct and you have to react. That's it. There is no question. That's what makes Anakin Anakin, is that he could tap into the Force at a level so deep that it rivaled Jedi's when he was a child. As he's racing pods, he's a pod racer. He could feel what to do. He doesn't know how. He doesn't know what's happening. He just feels something and he reacts. That's his connection to the Force. That's what makes him the chosen one. Now, everyone around you is telling you that what you're doing is wrong because he's a natural. He's an intuitive. And they're telling you, no, you have to meditate. You have to do this. The way you're tapping into the Force is closer to the dark side. You can't use emotions. You have to sever yourself from that. You have to do this. And what they're telling you is making you sloppier and making you weaker than you naturally are. Their technique works for them, but it works a little less for you because you already have your own way that works for you. Then that way is really good, right? So you have this deep connection to the Force. You have a dream. The dream, you have a feeling. You know inside of you that the Force is telling you, hey, something's going to happen to your mom. You have to do something. That's your whole connection is the Force tells you something and you have to do something. Mm-hmm. You don't think, you just react. That's Anakin. That's his connection with the Force. And you go to the person who's closest to you and you say, hey, something's going to happen to my mom. I had this vision. I feel something. I have to go there. I have to do something. No, Anakin. You have to wait for the Force. Listen to the Force. Calm down. Don't react. Don't have emotions. React. The Force will tell you what to do. The Force was telling him what to do. He didn't listen to the Force because he listened to his teacher, who didn't have the same connection to the Force that he did. His teacher, Obi-Wan Kenobi, betrayed him. His teacher made his mom die. If he had just went and reacted the way he normally does, his mom would be alive, his only living relative, the one who suffered with him as a slave. Suddenly you have this teacher who tells you to listen to your emotions, listen to your heart, you already know what to do. And you have this other teacher who tells you, hey, you just got to hang out and wait, maybe, the Force will tell you what to do something when the Force is already talking to you. And suddenly you become confused. You don't know who to listen anymore. You have this connection, they're telling you it's wrong. They're telling you you're doing it wrong. You have to meditate more. You're not calm enough. You're not the Jedi that they want you to be. You're not the chosen one that you want them to be. You have to be their person, right? And then you have this other person who's like, hey, there's other sides to this. There's more information that they don't even know. They have no idea. They're stuck inside their own universe. They're only giving you a small piece of information. In fact, they're kind of holding you back because you already know how to do this. And when you're doing what they're telling you to do, you're worse. You're sloppier. That's the conflict. Yeah. So when he sees the vision of Padme dying, how do you think he's going to react?
Do everything he can.
Do everything you can. Whatever the cost, because he's not going to lose his only other loved one. His only other one. Yeah. His mom is dead. This is the woman that he loves, the woman who is a celebrity. Imagine she is a millionaire actress, supermodel, and he is a slave. She is a queen of a planet, of an entire planet, right? So for him, the only thing he could offer her is his love. He's not allowed to own possessions. He's a monk. He's got a lightsaber and he's got a robe. That's it. He could let her hold his lightsaber. He has nothing to offer her but his love. And because Anakin goes 10x on everything, he's going to give her his love at the most that he possibly can.
Yeah.
That's how I understand the fall.
Interesting. And, the crazy thing, of course, in the show is in Obi-Wan Kenobi is that he still in those moments takes responsibility. When he's talking to Obi-Wan at the end, he takes responsibility for his actions. He's like, I am doing these things. These are my choices. Even when, talking to Luke, it's like, well, my choices were made. I chose this road. How do you feel about those moments in the show?
Well, just because he became Darth Vader, because the way we see it is we see two different characters. We see Anakin and we see Darth Vader. Mm-hmm. It's still the same person.
Right.
If I cut off your arms and your legs and put prosthetics on, that won't change who you are. It will sever. Yeah, I won't do it. I promise I won't do it. It will sever your identity, right? It will sever your attachments. It will sever your identity. But in your heart, you're still the same person, and that's the conflict that you see inside Darth Vader.
Yeah.
Anakin is good. Anakin has nowhere to go back to. He can't go back to the Jedi and be like, whoops, sorry, my bad, didn't mean it. He
That whole
has no
Mace
road
Windu
back.
thing. Sorry.
Yeah, sorry about that. Sorry. He's like Cortez. He burned his ships. His
Mm-hmm.
only path is forward, right? And for me, the way I played it was that I'm still the chosen one. In fact, I'm more the chosen one than I was before, because now I'm truly following my path. And in this moment, if I conquer the entire galaxy, there will be peace. Just like any type of conqueror, like Alexander the Great, Hitler, any type of person who attempted to mass conquer a thing, the main idea is once the entire world is conquered, then there is peace. Through an iron rule, but there is peace. And that's what he's doing. Is the Jedi way didn't work. They've been doing the same thing for thousands of years. It hasn't done anything. They've been sitting around waiting for someone to do something. Now he's doing something. He has nowhere to go back to. He's got zero friends. He's got no one to talk to. He doesn't trust Palpatine anymore, Darth Sidious. He only has his droids. He doesn't talk to a single person. He's in complete isolation, in complete loneliness, in his own regret, in his own mind, in his own anger, and he's just festering there. His only interaction with another person is a command. He only speaks in commands. That's it. So he's the most isolated, loneliest, hurt character in the entire universe.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what makes him so powerful. He's got nothing to lose because he's lost everything.
As far as you're talking about when you're still dealing with the rage afterwards, broke your hand. Do you still feel that your kind of way back was in a way kind of similar to Vader's arc in that?
Yes.
In finding.
Oh my God, yes. So for me, I didn't tell you the full story. So for me, when reshoots rolled around, my mom was in town and I tried to avoid doing reshoots.
Mm-hmm.
I just made up an excuse. I was like, my mom's in town. I can't really do it. I was like, have Tom, my stunt double, do it. Because I didn't want to go back to the headspace. I had just started feeling good, for 3 weeks after tormenting myself for a year, So I was in this crazy headspace for so long that I was just like, okay, I'm finally starting to see bright colors again and some kind of hope of any type of happiness or anything. I'm finally feeling like myself a little bit more, and then reshoots roll up, and I don't want to do them. And then they're like, no, we need you for it. And I was like, okay. So I'm hesitant because I'm afraid of going back in that headspace. I don't want to go there. And then we do the fitting, and the moment I put the suit back on, I feel the storm instantly back because it's programmed in me. The suit is part of the training and the meditation and the rage training. It's all part of it. I put it on and I feel it instantly. And
that's
for the fitting, And I resisted the whole time. I'm only wearing the suit for 15 minutes as we're trying to see if I still fit in it, because 4 months had gone by. So we're doing that, we take it off, and now I'm like, okay, man, I really don't want to do these reshoots. It's coming up in 4 days, and for me to do the reshoots means I have to go back there, and now I know that I can't avoid it. So we put the suit on. I'm trying to resist. We start strapping up on that day. I've gone through this whole crazy spiritual journey of self-discovery and everything. I put the suit on, and the rage comes back, and I don't fight it. I just let it happen, and I feel the storm in my solar plexus grow, and it grows more, and I'm just getting angrier and angrier, and everything that I trained and healed from instantly came back. And now I'm inside the storm, and it's inside of me. And then in this moment, while I'm here, I hear a voice in my head, and it's not Darth Vader's voice, it's my voice. And the voice said, I'm a monster. And in that moment, I couldn't say anything to rebuke it because I knew that it was true. Because during my process of becoming Darth Vader, I was looking for moments in my own life to find parallels with the character. So I was analyzing my own life, trying to find the worst things that I'd ever done to pair it to Darth Vader to understand who Darth Vader was. And I found it. And what the role did was it gave me a reflection of myself. It forced me to look into myself, to find the darkness within myself that I didn't believe existed, that I was reaching for as an actor, but it had already lived inside of me. And in that moment, when I knew that I was a monster and I knew that it was true, I smiled. And suddenly the storm went quiet. It went from to. And in that moment of stillness, I became Darth Vader. And I became Demetrius. It wasn't a conflict between Darth Vader and Demetrius. It truly was a conflict between two identities of myself. There was the parts of me that I used to play Darth Vader, and there was the parts of me that believed that they were good.
Yeah.
And they were fighting each other and had this internal conflict. And the moment I accepted the dark parts within myself, I became Darth Demetrius. I became Demetrius the actor and Darth Vader the role, and that's where Darth Demetrius comes from.
Yeah.
That and during my lore, I really love the story of Darth Bane and the desire of calling himself a Darth when they were in the Council of Brotherhood, or the Council, what do they call it? Brotherhood of Darkness. So they are all equals, and he says, "No, I am the strongest out of all of you," and that's when he gives himself the title of Darth. So that was both symbolic for that and for that merger of Darth Vader and Dmitrious Bistrevsky.
That's I mean, if you know the name Darth Bane, I think a lot of you do. One of the most famous Darths of all time in the lore. As far as I'm assuming, when it comes to research, you studied the movies, you studied the animated shows as well, because you had to become a part of this. Did you also go into like books and comics as well? You went through all of it. I
went through as much. I tried to eat as much Star Wars as I could for 5 months. Now, I have memory loss from concussions, so I've forgotten a lot of what I studied. Mm-hmm. But in that moment, I was manically studying everything, and not just the comics and not just the books. I studied the philosophy. I studied philosophy itself of the duality of nature, both found in Buddhism and Taoism, and a lot of different philosophical concepts, so I could truly understand the Force and the concepts behind them. So for me, it wasn't just playing a role. I understood that the scrutiny behind the role, and I really had to live it and make it real. So for me to make it real, I learned everything.
Yeah. So I'm going to go down a little geek path for a moment. From the very beginning with Star Wars, you have the face-off of Darth Vader and Obi-Wan. And this was like, of course, like once Vader was going to be revealed to be a part of this show, that's what, so many people were looking for, that those iconic moments that have really only happened a couple times before in history. What was it like for you on set, being in those moments of like Darth Vader and Obi-Wan?
Well, so for me, since my a lot of my approach was method, so I geeked out with Ewan when I met him during Sword Camp. And we had a few interactions, but honestly, when I was on set, I avoided Ewan as much as I could. I really tried to keep the tension and the distance between us so that we weren't too familiar with it, and there would always be some kind of underlying tension. And when I was doing my character development, I was doing a lot of really crazy stuff. I was doing a lot, like I said, I went a little bit too far into character, and my approach was very, very method. And one of the things that I was doing was during my rage sessions, I would chain smoke cigars on purpose, inhaling the smoke, holding it in my lungs until my lungs would burn. And then I'd take a nebulizer and I'd sit with a nebulizer, and it would like soothe my burning lungs. And then I would continue meditating to rage, and I would blame everything on Ewan, because Ewan for me is Obi-Wan. So for me, so I would blame. So I had this, I had this level of anger for the character that was very natural. So I kept the tension to us, and even when we were shooting scenes with both of us facing off from each other, I wouldn't come up and talk to him and chat. I would keep the distance from us. I would keep the distance the whole time. Yeah. So even there were moments where it'd be like Ewan, our stunt double Tom, and then a few people staying in one group chatting, and then I would be like 30 feet away just standing looking at them. But it was because it was necessary to have that tension. So we always had that push and pull.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you felt it. I mean, you could see it, like that, those tension moments there, with that push and pull. And of course, like, I think it's probably one of the most iconic Star Wars things that there is, like Obi-Wan and Vader. And the fact that you were feeling that at that time, I mean, we could definitely feel it. I know I could. And of course, like, you're looking forward to it so much, and that payoff was fantastic. And of course, like, you're coming off of the whole, like, I have the high ground, and then having to bring that here. But you felt that story. You felt that progression, if you're looking chronologically, from that. And then I think this show did a great job in segueing that middle point between the prequels and A New Hope. of like showing both in like how you moved, how both of you acted, even fighting styles. You felt that progression through that. Do you feel that now after having had this time and being able to look back? Do you feel like those moments were there?
So for me, while we were filming, I was in such a dark place. That whole
Mm-hmm.
year, I was in a dark place. I really was tapping into darkness, like meditating to rage, doing a lot of crazy stuff, spending most of my time in isolation and just fanatic training.
Yeah.
So when I finished the role and after everything went down, I didn't want to watch it. I didn't want to get triggered by it. I didn't want to watch the whole performance.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to remove myself from everything about it. And I didn't watch it until after I had done my first convention. And that's what saved it, because I was afraid of getting triggered. I was afraid of going back into the darkness that I'd spent
Mm-hmm.
so all of my energy to claw out of. So when I went to my first convention and I did my first panel, I hadn't seen the show, but I'd met a lot of the fans, and their questions were so profound, and they were talking about these experiences that they were feeling that made me curious, and it made me want to watch it. And then when I watched it, enough time had gone by from the role, but also with my memory loss, that I wasn't watching myself. I was watching Darth Vader.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't me anymore. I was so disattached from the process that when I was watching it, I was seeing Darth Vader and I was feeling Darth Vader, and it felt real. And I said, okay, mission accomplished.
Yeah.
It was real. The fighting is done by Tom O'Connell, my
Right.
stunt double. So all the fighting scenes is there, but the entrances when he leashes into the fighting, that's me. And a big note that I got from Deborah Chow, specifically about Vader, was about potential energy. Of Vader always being in the state of potential energy, and the way she described it was, imagine that you're a pit bull on the edge of a chain, and you're constantly pulling on that chain. And when you're pulling on that chain with all your might, to someone watching from a distance, you're standing still. Right? You're completely standing still, but really what's happening is you're pushing all your might against the chain. And that's what Darth Vader is. That's his rage. That's his meditation.
Yeah.
And when you see the chain break and you see Vader going from standing to moving, that's when you could feel the anger.
That is the best analogy I've heard for Vader in those moments that I've ever heard.
Deborah Chow is a genius. Like I said, Deborah Chow is a genius. It really was an honor working with her. She is a visionary. She's my favorite director.
I mean, with her work on Mandalorian and this, I mean, I would hand her any project and have that full trust. And hearing her talk in interviews, even before that with the Mandalorian, with her directing, you could hear that intelligence and that vision in how she speaks. Of course, people are going to ask, but did you ever work with Hayden at all? That there was that question earlier in the.
So, for me, my journey was a solo journey most of the time.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we had our team that we worked together, but I met Hayden on the day of the split screen, the split helmet.
Mm-hmm.
So I met because like Bruce Wayne and Batman, they're never in the same room together.
Yeah.
So if they were shooting scenes with Hayden, they didn't need scenes with Darth Vader. And that's what it was like. So other people worked intimately with Hayden. I didn't personally, but I got to meet him on the split helmet scene. And I had a chance to sit down and just kind of geek out for a second and talk to him, because it was really cool, because I'd watched all his work. I'd been watching his work, studying his work to become Darth Vader. So It was awesome to meet one of my heroes in person. And at the time, my whole so there's Team Black Bear. Everyone who worked as Darth Vader and contributed toward it was part of Team Black Bear. There was our dressers, there was our movement coach, there was Hayden, there was Tom, there was myself. So I made special gifts for Team Black Bear, for Dorian, the voice actor. So I had this shirt. It's an iconic shirt. You'll see it eventually. It says, "I am Black Bear, fear me." And there's a picture of a black bear taking a poop in the forest. Because everyone was giving, we're giving gifts to each other. But most of the gifts you couldn't wear till after the show came out. Right? It would say Star Wars or Obi-Wan or whatever. And we couldn't wear any of the swag until after the show came out. because of PR and everything else. So it was one of the few things that I could wear secretly all the time, because for me it was a Star Wars shirt, but no one knew that it was a Star Wars shirt.
Yeah.
So that's what it was. And I gave him an obsidian little bear, a black bear, obsidian black bear. And then I made custom hats for everyone in the cast, but I also made them for specifically for Team Black Bear, that I hand drew hats. So it was cool just to geek out and to give the gifts and just kind of share my love and the journey for the character, because we experienced it at different elements, and I understood the character and I understood how he played the character.
Yeah. Did the two of you talk about the character itself? I know you said geeking out, but I mean that would be hard when you're trying to like be in that zone for yourself. It might influence you.
Yeah, we had 5 minutes together. Yeah. That's how much we talked. It was like in between. His schedule is really fast. He's filming, either I'm filming or he's filming. Right. So it was a moment that we were both had some downtime, and I think they were, I don't know, adjusting lights or moving cameras or something. And then I just kind of talked to him for 5 minutes. That was the only. Yeah, there was no other time together where we were on set.
Well, I mean, I've having worked a bit on film as well. Like it's really interesting, like scheduling the stars, the actors. Like they really hone in. Like, okay, Ewan's gonna be Ewan. It was his show. He's also producing, so he was there the whole time. Yeah, but like somebody like Hayden, where it's like, okay, this is the day we have Hayden. It's gonna really be honed in with that scheduling. They're not just like hanging around. It's kind of like. Is Hayden ready to film? Okay, let's get to it now.
Yeah, 100%.
So that's pretty much what it's like on there. So I'm glad you actually had that moment on set, because the way they schedule things, that would have been tough. And of course, it's
even that moment, I had to steal that moment. Even that moment, I had to like make sure that he wasn't doing anything and making sure that people weren't adjusting him or anything, so I could have that one moment. Because both of our schedules, we're either filming or we're not. Cameras are moving. It's a busy environment. We're not hanging out.
Yeah,
we're trying to get a job done. Yeah.
What was he in that makeup?
Yeah. Oh yeah, totally. I don't know how long. I've done a lot of prosthetics, because I've done a lot of suit and creature acting, and I know how grueling prosthetics are, and that process of your call time is 3 hours before everyone else's call time, so that we could do the prosthetics. And while everyone else arrived at 7 a.m., you may have arrived at 3 a.m., had breakfast, and started makeup at 3:30 or 4 a.m. to be on call. So when everyone is arriving fresh, you're already exhausted from sitting in a chair. You're already in your own sweat. You're already uncomfortable. I know how rough prosthetics are. That was Hayden. In the prosthetics. Yeah, he did that.
That's I've done prosthetics like a little bit for somebody's like project that they had to do, and just having to sit in a chair for a long time, and then you have this thing on your face and you don't want to disturb it. Like, you're kind of uncomfortable the entire time. Speaking of which, obviously I didn't ask too much about the suit, but were there things about the suit, first of all, that were super uncomfortable, and things that also added to help your character?
All of the suit added for the character, and all of the suit was uncomfortable. Specifically, there was we had this thing where our pants were attached to these suspenders that were very, very taut elastic that would attach to our mantle. Because in the beginning, what we found was whenever you're doing a force power or you're moving, it makes the shoulders sway. This happens. And to avoid this, what we did was we strapped down the mantle to our body, to our pants, so that even when you did a movement with a sword, even when you did a force power or whatever, the shoulders would stay in the same spot. And that band was so strong that you always had to engage your core and lift up against it, or else it would hurt your back. The suit was in such a way that either you get strong or the suit breaks you. Because if I allowed the suit to do what it wanted to do from the elastic band, this is what would happen instantly. Yeah. Because that's how much it was pulling. So constantly I'm here engaging my core and pulling my head up, because that's what prevents my back from being hurt. That also happens to be the right posture for Vader, which is fantastic. Because if I don't do the right posture for Vader, I'm going to hurt my back.
Yeah.
So while filming everything, it was like, I don't know, after a month of filming or a month and a half of filming, I started developing a knot in my lower back, specifically from the muscles engaging to keep everything in. and it was a moment. There was like a 2-day period where I couldn't walk. Literally, my back was spasming so much. I saw Olga. We like met up for coffee, and I was just like, oh my god. But production was so good, and they gave me they had like a PT on set, and who happened to be a chiropractor and did all this body work, and they had him scheduled come to my house and do treatment on me, so that I could get back to doing it. Yeah, I mean he fixed me real quick, but it was like I said, the suit is the suit. It's exactly as it should be. It's the suit for Darth Vader. I mean, even for himself.
Yeah, that's exactly what Darth Vader's suit is in canon. Is that that it's always, he's always in pain, always feeling that,
on
and
purpose.
That keeps him enraged. Yeah, which is a whole sadistic, sadomasochist aspect to how Darth Vader like fuels his rage. In that,
no, it's penance. It's not just if you think rage, it's a superficial level. He's paying penance for his actions. He's still Anakin. You're forgetting he's still Anakin.
Yeah,
he's feeling the pain is making him stronger, but the pain is a reminder of what he did, and the reminder makes him angry, and the anger gives him power, and the frustration gives him power, and it's a loop that creates more anger. Imagine like the flogging. It happened in Catholicism where they would flog themselves as penance for doing something wrong. The suit is a version of that. He's doing it because he feels that he deserves it, but also it makes him stronger. He knows himself better than anyone else because he still is Anakin and he still is Darth Vader. He's both people, so he knows what he did. He sees his actions. He sees the manipulation that happened to him that got him in that situation. But also there is no way out but through. He's already there, so you might as well deal with it. And he uses that reminder as a way to get more power, to truly tap into the primal parts of himself, and that's where he's pulling the Force from.
When you were playing the character, because you're saying you're talking about that you're still Anakin and you have the penance. Did you at all, as portraying that, ever feel the pull to the light?
You have to understand that the understanding of the light and the dark is a lot deeper than the way you think of it as in a superficial way.
Yeah.
So the way that I explain it to other people, the Force itself, is both the light and the dark are wrong. Because we're talking about duality. We're not talking about literally specifically good and evil. We're talking about duality. We're talking about the nature of duality. And another way to describe it is front and back, or up and down. I wouldn't say up is bad and down is good, or down is good and up is, I wouldn't say that. They're both necessary for each other. You can't have down without having up. You can't have left without having right, because you have nothing to compare it to. Now, the second part is, if I have endless creation, for instance, if plants grew and never died and lived for thousands of years and you could never kill them, they would overgrow everything. And though creation is good, that would be chaos. It would be hell if literally they just kept on growing and growing and growing and consuming everything. The other end of the coin is that if you have endless destruction, if things just break and break and break, then everything would dissipate into chaos, and that would also be hell. You need to have creation and you have to have destruction. You need to have balance. One keeps the other in check. This is the flow of the universe. This is the flow of the Force. It's looking for balance, but it's always moving from one edge to the other. It doesn't care if you are light or if you are dark. What it cares about is balance and having checks and balances in the whole universal cosmic picture. Not about what's happening right now here and there. It's if the Jedis go too much into power, they become stagnant. They don't do anything. They become lazy. They fall apart. Everything crumbles from their stagnation. If the Sith go too much in power, they start destroying everything, and everything crumbles too. Both extremes are bad. And the Force will always create opposition. If you go too much into the dark side, you will have a Luke Skywalker who will rise up to bring balance. If you go too much into the light, if there's just stagnation, you will have an Anakin Skywalker who will fall to the dark. Everything will always have a balance. Now, the way Vader sees the Force is entirely different. There's only a few people, a few in canon who understand it, a few masters who have experienced truly the depths of both the darkness and the light. Vader has the training of a Jedi Master. He understands meditation much deeper than the Sith do, because his training was meditation. His training was stillness, that through stillness you could hear the Force and you could tap into the Force. He also knew the other aspect of it, which was through passion. Through passion and through these primal feelings, you could have this energy and tap into the Force as well. They're not right or wrong. They're just two different strategies to tap into the Force. One waits for an answer and the answer comes. The other one relies on impulse and intuition and reacts instantly. They're just two different methods of doing it. He understood both. So he could keep the meditation, and that's the stillness that you see in Vader. That's different from other Sith Lords, is that he has the meditation Jedi training. That's what allows him to be still. He's constantly in meditation, but also he could turn it off. He could break the leash, and when that leash snaps, he could go, and that's what gives him power. So it's not that he's going back to the light. There is no light to go back to. He is one with the Force. He is the chosen one, doing what he must do. He's fulfilling a prophecy.
Yeah. I mean, Star Wars has been doing, little by little, doing a better job at explaining balance of the Force. Because I think it's been a misunderstanding for a lot of years. Of course, like, there's a lot of fans who think of balance as like there needs to be an even number of something. When it's not about that. It's that there's life, there's death, there's a continuous cycle. Is that everything is in balance because everything has to have this cycle. But as soon as that cycle is disrupted, then that imbalance is there, and then something has to happen to bring that balance back. And that's essentially 100%. a lot of what happened. And that's what they're developing in Star Wars right now, is like a lot of the High Republic books going a little bit further back. You start to, like, you're getting that glimpse of starting to see the Jedi going from one thing, and then, you know, events are kind of shifting them to where we see them in the prequels. And what you're talking about is where the Jedi are is they're a little cocky. They're a little full of themselves in a particular way. And although they're preaching the values that they have, that, you know, being beholden to the Republic and a lot of these other elements that they kind of conceded on over time, you know, shifted things. And of course, then that's when you have the rise of Plagueis, Palpatine, and the Sith, with that balance. It's an interesting perspective, because I often, like, having grown up and like seeing the Jedi as this wonderful thing to be, but seeing the complexities of this, and really hearing your perspective is giving me a whole kind of new layer on top of that. Like, I did know that the balance of the Force, you know, needed that light and dark, but hearing your perspective gives me much more depth into that, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that's cool. One thing to do is also that the Force, the way to describe the Force is the infinity symbol. Mm-hmm. So you think about the infinity symbol, the sideways figure 8, and one side is light and one side is dark. But if you follow the line, you will eventually end up on the dark, and you'll end up back on the light. It follows through infinity, right? So without realizing it, the light will eventually shift into the dark, and the dark will eventually shift into the light. But it's so imperceivable that it happens slowly. So the Jedi will fall, and they will fall not because of their conceit and because of their arrogance and because of their inaction. They start to fall, and they start tipping, and the balance starts tipping to the dark side. And then also the other end of the spectrum, when you go too far in the dark, you see the suffering. Eventually catches up. You're in this place of just pain for so long that eventually you reach humanity. And that's what happens to Darth Vader. Yeah, is that he finds humanity. So the dark turns back into the light. That's that infinity symbol, and that little section in the center is where the gray Jedi live.
Yeah, I mean, we see a lot of that in like different story arcs. That, you know, they brought in Ahsoka to really kind of show somebody similar to Anakin but making different choices. With that, to just kind of show a little bit more of Anakin's story arc, so we can see that, because you only get a glimpse of it in the actual movies, but you know, the Clone Wars goes a lot more into depth. So just being on set with the Vader suit and being in that moment, we're all fascinated with lightsabers. When you had that lightsaber clip to your side, are you able to kind of feel that bounce around? Was that an annoyance, or
Yeah.
did that just kind of add to it?
I don't know. It was an annoyance. It was cool because I was a little bummed that I wasn't allowed to do any of the saber training, because I really wanted to, and I'm very, very skilled in learning, specifically movement, physical learning.
Yeah.
So, but the lightsaber, I always had the hero lightsaber, and that felt really cool to have the hilt by your side. One thing that we did find was that it was hard to reach it. if you had to unclip it, it was awkward in the suit.
Yeah.
So I think we always had it where it would just be in his hand, but you'd never see. We tried it where we reached it and it was just really clumsy. I couldn't do it in a seamless way without it seeming clumsy. But no, it was like, it's part of me. The lightsaber is part of me. The lightsaber is one of the most important parts of me. You know, so having that clip to my side was an honor. You know, it's like almost having like a lucky charm.
I love that. I mean, every time I've tried to make my own little videos, and you having that lightsaber attached there, like, you do have to edit that moment out, because like unclipping, which is why always in the movies you see them using the Force to bring it into their hand, because like there's no good way to do any of that. Of course, like, I have to ask about the helmet itself. When it comes to wearing that, so was it 3 pieces? Because I know there's the neck piece.
Yeah,
somewhere
so
around there. It's like 3 or 4.
I don't remember.
Yeah,
it's because my memory's hazy. There was, the dome was separate from the mask, but I don't remember how that happened. I think there was a neck piece, and then there was like a helmet, and then there's a face mask, and then there's the dome on top that was held by magnets. I don't remember if there was more pieces. It's just been so long, and
I know.
I've had 6 concussions, so my memory fades after a few months.
I know there's if you're ever curious, those watching, I know Adam Savage has like a whole thing on the Vader suits from that show on YouTube. So if you want to go kind of look and see what Demetrius is talking about,
get a refresher,
with a lot of that, you'll be able to like hear these stories and then go see what that was actually like. When you finally, every time, I'm curious, what was the feeling every time that came down on your head when you're getting prepped?
That was the final thing. That was the final icing on the cake, or the sprinkle on top of the cupcake. It was because you have the helmet, and there's certain things that you miss, senses that you miss. You know, like the lenses are tinted yellow, so the lights are kind of distorted, and the lenses have a curvature, so it kind of changes your depth perception a little bit. But that final dome was really when the sound is muffled, and that's when you could start hearing your breath. So normally there's enough spacing around that you don't get stuck in that echo of your breath. That echo of your breath only happens really when the dome is on.
Yeah.
So that final moment, you're wearing the mask, all the bits are there, and then when they put the dome on, everything just goes and becomes really quiet, and then you hear your breath. And that's the last part that really ties the character in. And then you're Vader. Then you're there.
Yeah. I also want to put this out there for those of you that in the chat. If you have any questions, put them out there so we can get to any of those before wrapping up. As far as how you feel now, having had enough distance, because it's been over a year since you've had to do any of that. As far as your internal resolve with a lot of that, do you feel like you've been able to kind of recover yourself at this point, or is there always something that kind of lives there?
There is a new, I don't know how to put it into words. There's a new aspect of myself that has unlocked, right? So I still have the strength of Vader. I will always have the strength of Vader and the resolve of Vader. That is something that I cultivated through my training and through the process of finding the character. That was a gift that I've earned, which is the strength and the resolve. But what I developed was the peace with it. It's there, and I could access it if I want to access it, but it doesn't control me. It doesn't control me. It doesn't steer me. It doesn't guide me. It is just there, and it's in the back of my mind, and I can just reach out and use it. So what it did was it created new depth in my own acting. It developed my range.
Right.
I tapped into a deeper level of range that I didn't have before, which has been really good. When I finished, I really needed a break, and I'd put myself psychologically through so much that I was like, I'm gonna really walk away from acting for a little bit,
Yeah.
just to recenter myself and everything and reprioritize everything. So I've spent the whole year of doing passion projects. I wrote a lot. I created a game. I wrote 2 books. I developed a sword system. I've been training sword about 4 to 5 hours a day now for about a year and a half.
Yeah.
And that's what allowed me to put a lot of the angst and the anger that was left. I always put it into my sword. So I still rage train. I could enter the flow state and then I rage in my training, and I'll do that. And that's been a really cool part of me because now that's a part of me. For a
Mm-hmm.
while, when I finished the role, I still continued my walking. It was a form of meditation, my rage
Yeah.
walking. So I did that for a while, and then that transitioned into just the sword training. And now the sword training is something I keep up with, and now I'm trying to become a sword master, like a legitimate sword master.
I see you
So
posting videos on that. Yeah.
yeah. So I'm training full time in sword, and I know that my next project, whatever it is, it will most likely have something to do with a sword.
That's awesome. So, a question being, how much were you involved in the costume creation process?
uh, there's a whole team of people who do a lot
Mm-hmm.
of stuff. I was involved in the putting on the costumes, and for them to see how it looks like on me and how it fits. I had a little bit of say in just movement and mobility, like asking for gussets in my pants, but it's like the smallest thing possible. There's a whole team that worked on this that we went through. Oh, so one of the coolest things was our earlier versions of the suit. Our prototype version was 3D printed. They had designed it on my body. They had set the pieces. I don't know if it was made in London or if it was made here. I don't remember. But we received the parts of the suit, and the suit was the white Vader suit because it wasn't painted or colored. So it was like that beigey white 3D printed kind of material, and that's
Mm-hmm.
what the suit was made out of. And then all of the clothes, all the parts of it, the garments were all white. It was out of just a generic fabric, and it was the coolest suit I have ever seen. The white Vader suit, and I fell in love with it. I wish they had given it to me. It was one of the coolest suits because I was like, oh my god, this suit is beautiful. As far as really having any contribution to the suit, they had their own team. They had their own specialists who were looking at the details of how much to shift the eye sockets and what to do. And as you know, there's different versions. I don't know how many generations of Vader masks there are, but they're all fine tuned and changed subtly. And there's a whole team of people who are engineering that, going through everything. So I wasn't really a part of that creation. I just wore it, and they tested it. We did a lot of fittings for it.
I mean, it's the amount of detail that they put into that, and like from what I saw, that they did a lot of things by hand as well. Because I know the Vader mask itself has this asymmetrical aspect to it that you don't really see on film, but it makes a difference. With
I
that.
did not know that.
I didn't know either. I learned from the video, like all these years. Like I didn't realize that like the for like the earlier versions of Vader. I don't know if, what your suit was, but like I think some of the eye was like orange, like in one of the like early on in A New Hope, but it comes across looking red or black depending on the lighting. With that, the fact that like I think one of the cheek panels is a different shade than the rest of it. And again, I only see this when I look closely. In the film, don't notice it at all. But just and of course you're literally looking from the other side of it. You're looking out.
Yeah.
Everybody else has to look at you, and that's its own scary moment. I see it's focusing on that. Okay, we got other questions. Oh yeah, the Adam Savage video. Yeah, that's what I'm looking at. Now I'm all blurry looking at Vader. Let's see if I can change that. Okay, now I'm back. But yeah, like there are things I learned about Vader that I had Vader's suit that I had no idea about. But like yeah, being inside, like how would you know? You're spending like 10 hours a day looking through the mask rather than at the mask. So just for a moment, I know you mentioned looking through the eyes of that. and that you really could only see forward and at a distance. What was did that vision kind of add to that character when it came to your lack of vision?
Very much so, yeah. Like I said, we believed in the Force. I believe in the Force. There was a moment where you're sensing things. You're using sense memory. I know that there's something to the left of me, to the right. I know there's a person in front of me. I can't see or feel them. I'm so disconnected from everything. And I'm 6'7", and then with the boots and with the helmet, I'm like 6'10" or 6'11". With everything, with the dome and the boots and with everything said and done, I'm like 6'10" or 6'11". So if someone is standing in front of me, they're most likely invisible if I can't see them. So you could sense them, and I can sometimes peek and see a little bit of them. But honestly, I'm going through these scenes blind. So you start feeling it. You start feeling what Vader feels, where you're not relying on your eyes. You're not relying on your hearing. You're not relying on touch. You're relying everything on feeling. How does it feel? You feel the presence. You start feeling this sensation that can only be described as the Force.
Mm-hmm. One of my last little things, and it's a complete detour, but you mentioned that you've started to do some of the conventions, and actually being able to connect with the fans when it comes to that. How has your convention experience been?
Oh my God, my convention experience has been the best part of the whole project. Hands down, hands down. I went through such a dark period. I went through such a dark period that when I finished the project, I was like, this project was a monkey's paw. I broke my brain. I went too far. I wasn't supposed to do this, and I had so many hardships in my own training, self-imposed hardships, I might add, but in my own training and the fanaticism that I approached the role, because I approached it as Anakin would. And so when I went to conventions and really seeing the feedback and meeting fans on the ground and seeing how much impact it was, I started understanding that it was all worth it. And I'm a technique nerd, so I study technique and philosophy and theory. This is what I do for fun. And I will study theory in the concept like hand balancing or in spinning or something like that. I will find the root theory to understand it in a poetic way. Not the superficial stuff that people are teaching, but there's an underlying theory technique to it. And that's what is my obsession, my passion. And to go on the ground and talk to people about philosophy and about sword spinning and staff spinning and stuff that I'm passionate about, it's cool. I'm just hanging out with friends.
Yeah.
So that experience has been the most beautiful experience out of everything, has been the conventions.
That's awesome. And having started to going to more conventions, went to the last two celebrations, WonderCon and things like that. Like just the passion and the love that are at these conventions are incredible. Do you have anything on the roster coming up?
I have 2 booked in September. I have one in Canada and one somewhere in America. I don't know the dates.
Where? Do you know where in Canada?
I don't know. I have no idea.
I have 2 Canadians in the chat that want to know. We'll talk.
I could probably look it up. You can message me afterwards. I'll look it up. I just don't know my schedule off the back of my mind. But I have 2 things booked in September. That's the only things I have booked so far. But I'm now working with multiple convention agencies who are booking, because I'm really enjoying the process. So there's a potential to be booked more. It's just my schedule hasn't filled up yet. And I've been off the grid. I spent 2 months off the grid in Thailand training sword. I went to Thailand and I looked for sword masters, and I trained with 3 different masters in Krabi Kurban, a specific Thai dual wielding style, because I'm on a quest to become a master. Yeah. So I was off the grid, completely off the grid, and I've just reemerged back on the grid for like 3 weeks ago. So it's
Welcome
like
back.
Been, yeah, thank you. Thank you. It was cool. I was in a village for a month, just training.
That's awesome. But I'm pretty sure there's plenty of people out there that would love to learn sword spinning from Darth Vader.
I put secret tutorials, Easter egg tutorials in my Instagram.
That's right. So what is it? Remind me of what your handle is on Instagram.
It's DEMEET, the number 2, and then K, Demet2K. And on my Instagram, you'll see there's a little, in my highlights, there's a little page that says Instagram or Easter eggs. And I've left a bunch of Easter eggs. I spent 2 years making Easter eggs. for the fans. So
That's awesome.
yeah, there's a lot to dive in for people who like detail, because I put a lot of work into it.
I'm definitely going to be one of those people that dives in, and for you out there, let's communicate and see what you find. We can make it a whole thing. But I'm curious. Yeah, I've got so apparently there's a convention in September in Edmonton, I believe. We'll talk, but my friends are kind of not really excited right now.
I can't wait to meet them. I don't know if it's Edmonton. I will tell you afterwards, but I'm excited to meet them.
Regardless, they're super fans. Yeah, they would definitely love to meet you. But the two of you, John and Julie, will talk. It'll be fine. But yeah, I'm very excited to hear that you're going to be out and getting to be amongst the fans and do some sword spinning. Maybe we can set something up. I'll talk to you about that too. I've got ideas now. But anybody else in the chat have any last questions for Demetrius? Because the next thing we're all about to do is go on Instagram, right? And if you're not sure what the logistics were on that, I will put it in the comments, not the comments, the description of this video afterwards once it posts. So you can go dive in. If you're watching this video afterwards, it's already there.
Okay, cool.
But they're stoked. But again, thank you so much for being here and agreeing to come on. I know kind of a small time podcast, but the fact that you're able to come on, talk about your experience, and the fact that you have so much insight into not only the characters but Star Wars is something you don't see as much with even the people who are involved in Star Wars. That you go in further into that, which I think is super awesome.
Thank you.
and I'm happy that you've found your way back in that.
Me too. Me too.
Any last little things that you want to plug while you're here?
Yeah. I recently wrote a book called Becoming Vader: Journey into Darkness. I'm looking for an editor / publisher to publish the book. So I'm kind of putting it out there. You know, if someone knows someone, that'd be cool. It's my whole story, but it's my origin story from the beginning, because I started off as a janitor in Spokane, Washington. And it follows my journey from being a janitor to going on So You Think You Could Dance, to training with a Russian grandmaster, to working on Broadway, and the whole journey of like being a janitor to playing Vader, and that whole path. And it's a very fascinating book because I've lived a really crazy life. The second thing is I've recently developed a fitness card game called Fit Chain. And it's a dueling card game where you play with a friend, and the game tells you to work out. And so it's a workout game, and the idea is for people who don't like to work out and need someone to tell them to do it and like to play games. And
you
by playing
literally
the
hit
game,
just a market with the people in the chat right now. Sorry, continue.
So I've just made the prototype. There's 3 versions that are developed, plus there's also booster packs, and there's a Fit Chain Lite that's made for the general person who wants to get a little bit of exercise and who's not in the best of shape. There's Fit Chain Regular. For Fit Chain Regular, you already have to be pretty strong. And there's a Fit Chain Heavy, which is made for elite athletes, specifically for circus artists, high-level martial artists, high-level gymnasts, acrobats, contortionists. And that one is a very intense game. It's a very hard game. But these are fitness games. So the whole point is that you play a game and you work on fundamentals and you get stronger and you stay in shape. And if you don't know what to do and if you don't like to go to a gym, you could just play one game a day with a friend and you've already got more fitness in than you normally do.
That is a brilliant idea. I love that, and I've got a lot of friends in here that actually love those types of games, just card games in general. So I think you're gonna hit a nerd circuit for that. Anything else? So we've got a book. Anybody know any publishers? Make that happen. Of course, the card game, and if anybody wants to put together, some Darth Vader training with swords, we can make that happen. Again, thank you to everybody in the chat.
I teach a workshop,
please do. Yeah.
So one of the things that I do at conventions is that sometimes I teach a workshop that I developed, which is understanding the Force through sword and staff spinning. So I teach sword and staff spinning, but I teach the philosophical concepts of the Force, explained through the exercise that we're doing to learn how to spin.
Yeah.
So in one go, you both understand the philosophy and you get to experience the training.
I got people in the chat. Yeah, I will definitely beat you at that card game, by the way, everybody. That all my friends there. Because I do bodybuilding stuff, so and also a partner dancer. So the challenge is on. So when that game comes out,
there are no losers in the game. There are no losers in the game.
There are no losers.
You either defeat your opponent. The whole point of the game is that you're trying to make the other person condition. So either you defeat your opponent, you win, or you condition and you get stronger. It's a win-win. You either get fit or you win the game.
You will all work harder. I love that. And of course, if you're in the chat, don't forget to like this video so it can kind of get out there, and subscribe and share this video when it's out there, because this has been one of the greatest conversations I've had about Star Wars in many years. I learned things, which is not easy to do in Star Wars for me, being such a nerd. But just the philosophy that talks we've had today has been fantastic. But again, thank you all for joining in. Very much appreciate it. And of course, go to his Instagram and find those Easter eggs. Look for that Easter egg there. Demetrius, thank you so much. It has been an absolute pleasure to have you. And I'm sure everybody else in the chat, yep, liked and subscribed. I'm sure everybody else in the chat has also had that same feeling. Yeah, the people are already saying it's such a great chat. So thank you for being here, and of course we will have more great podcasts coming up for you. I don't know how we're gonna beat the Darth Vader thing, but I don't know if we have to. I think this just lives in infamy now forever. Any last things that you want to say while we're here? May the Force be with you.
So I mean, yeah, may the Force be with you. But more specifically is believe in yourself. The Force is there for everyone to tap into, and what gives the Force power? The Force blesses specific people, right? And what the Force is looking for is people with resolve. Regardless of what it is, whether your resolve is in the Sith or whether your resolve in the Jedi, you have to move with resolve. You have to believe in yourself, and you have to act on that belief. And that permeates in life too, where anything that you want or anything that you feel you can or can't achieve is going to be limited to your own perception of yourself. And the main thing is believe in the Force, believe in yourself, believe in the universe, but just believe and walk with that belief. It'll make life more exciting.
Impressive. Most impressive. I can't say anything better than that, so all I will say is